Hey, greetings everyone. In the previous video, we went over a brief introduction to educational research in general. And in this one, we are going to talk briefly about quantitative research design. So the content that we will cover in this brief video will be basic methodology for quantitative research design, research questions by type of research design, defining statistics. Research begins with a question, deciding on the type of statistical test to use, levels of data, types of variables. So let's start. So the basic methodology for quantitative research design is also based on the brief introduction I gave in my previous video on educational research. So this type of research design, like all other types of research, is based on the scientific method. The difference between quantitative and qualitative research, however, is that quantitative research uses deductive reasoning, where the researcher forms a hypothesis, collects data to investigate the problem, and then uses the data from the investigation after analysis is made and make some conclusions, and then they would test their hypotheses. The basic procedure of a quantitative research design usually involves the following steps: making an observation about something that is unknown, unexplained, new, or simply something that interests you as a researcher. Then you will engage in a review of current theory surrounding the problem or issue to be investigated. You will look into the gaps or look for gaps in the previous research. This is why your literature review is so crucial in this process. So if you are hypothesizing an explanation for those observations or making a prediction of outcomes based on your hypotheses, you should formulate a plan to test your prediction. Knowing the type of data and variables you are dealing with is so important. So you would select your most appropriate statistical tests. You will later share a couple of, later share a couple of charts to guide you in determining which statistical tests to use. Step number 5, you will go ahead and start collecting and analyzing your data. Run your tests to see if your prediction was correct. If it was not correct, the hypothesis has been proven false. The next step, you will go and you verify your findings and making your final conclusions. And of course, at the end, you will be presenting your findings in an appropriate form for your audience, depending on who your audience will be. You will share the reports, for example, with your colleagues, school administration, present the paper at a professional conference, and or publish it in a professional journal. All right, so research questions by type of research design. I will briefly talk about these. For example, if we are engaged in a true experimental design, an example of a question that would go with that design is something like, what is the impact of teaching with a strategy that focuses on features of nonfiction text versus a traditional approach in a 5th grade EL second language reading comprehension of nonfiction text in an urban elementary school, for example. So this would be measuring the impact of this strategy, the strategy that focuses on features of text in nonfiction text versus a traditional approach used in a 5th grade elementary school, and that impact on their second language acquisition, reading comprehension. The second one is a quasi-experimental. And of course, a true experimental design would involve randomizing the sample and controlling the variables and so on and so forth. There are so many aspects to that. The second one is quasi-experimental. It's less maybe experimental in a sense than the true experimental. So in this case, we have what is the effects of preschool attendance on first grade EL second language literacy skills in an urban elementary school. So this question would be investigated using a quasi-experimental design. Another quantitative research design would be the correlational type of quantitative research design. And in this case, a question that would go with that would be, what is the relationship between an aptitude test score and achievement score of 5th grade EL second language reading comprehension of nonfiction text in an urban elementary school? And finally, an example from a descriptive quantitative research design would be a description of the extent to which 5th grade teachers use scaffolding techniques with their EL students. So as you can see, the research questions would determine the type of research design that you will have to use. So what is statistics? Statistics is the science and practice of developing human knowledge through the use of empirical data expressed in quantitative form. So you use numbers to develop human knowledge, and you are using empirical data expressed in a quantitative form. It is based on statistical theory, which is a branch of applied mathematics. Within statistical theory, randomness and uncertainty are modeled by probability theory. So basically, we are going to express a level of probability, and that's why we talk about the levels of significance in conducting quantitative research. All right. Research begins when there is a question. All right. We already covered this in previous videos. Now we are talking about in the use of descriptive statistics and inferential statistics. These questions would trigger the use of descriptive or versus inferential statistics. For example, how many male EL teachers work at Huntsville High School? Very basic descriptive study. How many hours a week do teachers spend working with their ELs in, for example, in the school district? So you would do a descriptive statistical analysis to answer these questions. Inferential statistics, on the other hand, we have, does the nature of L1 help my 5th grade ELs acquire L2? So does the nature of first language literacy, for example, help my 5th grade ELs acquire second language literacy? What factors most predict success in second language among my 5th grade ELs? So these two questions will require the use of inferential statistics, as we will see later on. Okay, deciding on the type of statistical use or test to use. So please refer to the following flowcharts that will guide you on what type of statistical test or tests you are going to use. This process is decided by the kind of data that you have, the number of variables that you are dealing with, number of groups, etc. So all of those factors will contribute to your decision. Okay, so I am sharing this flowchart that I used from Dr. Field's book, Discovering Statistics Using SPSS, 2009, and it is entitled Quantitative Research Design Statistical Tests Flowchart. So as you can see, as you go through this flowchart, you answer each question. For example, here it's asking you about how many outcome variables do you have? Is it 1 or 2? All right. So based on your answer, you move to the next level, till you reach to the red boxes here, which are your statistical tests that you are going to be using in that case. Okay. So I hope you can find this useful. And I will make sure I put a copy of this on the course for you all to access. The second one is in your textbook also, and this is designs for group comparison analysis or analyses. This is from, again, Dr. Myrtle's book, Action Research, Improving Schools and Empowering Educators, 2020. In this case, you have, depending on the number of measures you are using, the number of groups, it will indicate or dictate the type of inferential statistics that you will be using in each case. So there you go. So you have independent measures t-test or repeated measures t-test or ANOVA as inferential tests that you will be using depending on the number of measures you are using and the number of groups you are using. Okay, types of statistics. Again, descriptive statistics describe the relationship between variables. Examples of these would include frequencies, means, and standard deviation. The mode is also mentioned in descriptive statistics. Inferential statistics, this kind of statistics make inferences about the population based on a random sample. Examples of these include independent measure t-test, repeated measure t-test, ANOVA, chi-square, among others. Okay? Levels of data now and types of data that you are dealing with. So your data or data can be nominal or categorical. For example, gender is nominal or categorical. Ethnicity, grade level. Data that is classified into categories and cannot be arranged in a particular order. These data is referred to as nominal, categorical, or dichotomous. So you have this definition of your data that you are dealing with. Ordinal data, on the other hand, is data that can be ordered, but distances between the intervals not always equal. An example of that, you ask EL students to rank their most and least interesting ESL activity. Another type of data is called interval. Equal distances between each interval. So we have equal distances between each interval. Examples of that would be test scores are usually treated as interval scales in language research. Scales based on Likhart's, for example, scale or items are also commonly treated as interval scales in our field. Ratio data or data is similar to interval scale, but has a zero or a true 0 point, for example, weight, salary, etc. Okay? Types of variables. Variables can be classified as independent or independent, as you know. An independent variable is the variable that you believe will influence your outcome measure. Okay? A dependent variable is the variable that is dependent or dependent on or influenced by the independent variable or variables. A dependent variable may also be the variable that you are trying to predict. Okay? So these are your major types of variables that we deal with in education. An intervening variable is the variable that links the independent and dependent variable. So for example, independent variable will have an intervening variable and a dependent variable. An example of that would be the educational level as an independent variable. Occupational type is the intervening variable, and the income level will be your dependent variable. Another type of variables that we have is referred to as a confounding variable, which is a variable that has many other variables or dimensions built into it. For example, the socioeconomic status and how can we measure socioeconomic status, income, employment status, etc. So we need to be careful when we are using or dealing with confounding variables and not letting them interfere with what we are doing. So we have to be clear about those types of variables in our research. A researcher wants to study the effect of audiolingual. This is an example. A researcher wants to study the effect of audiolingual method in second language acquisition. So the audiolingual method would be the independent variable because it is hypothesized that it will have an effect on second language acquisition. So you will have your hypothesis right there. And a second language and second language would be the dependent variable because it is the variable that may be influenced by ALM in this case. So ALM will be your independent variable. The direction of the effect, whether it increases or decreases the impact, and then you have the dependent variable, which is the second language acquisition aspect that you are measuring. Okay,